Oh, hello. When I was a kid, trading card games were for kids, and I was told that I would grow out of it, so much so that it was second nature to me to sell all of my cards when I graduated high school, because adults don't play trading card games, do they? Well, actually now they do. And I know some did back then, but the concept, the idea of everything from Digimon to Magic the Gathering to Pokemon was that this was kids' stuff. But it's not, is it? It's our stuff, all of our stuff. It's just an awesome thing for all ages. And over the last 2 years, we have seen an explosion in everything from tabletop to board gaming to TCGs and other collectibles. And I wonder why that is. What is the cause of that explosion? And what I've thought to myself is that, well, kids are obviously still interested in all this fun, cool stuff like TCGs, but also now those of us who played these games when we were younger or even watched the shows and movies or read the comics that were based on these games, we're adults and it's okay for us to like whatever it is we like. And so in many ways, the audience has grown, has doubled. In some ways, it's the power of nostalgia. Why have I been thinking about nostalgia lately? Well, it's because I was sent this by Bandai, sponsor of this video, the Digimon Classic Collection. This is a set that leans heavily into the idea of nostalgia by embracing classic art styles and design. Just check out the box right off the bat. I can't wait to crack into these cards and see just what is in store in the Classic Collection. And while yes, this unboxing is indeed sponsored, and thank you for the free box, I think that idea of nostalgia and how important it is a classic one. What exactly is going to be the nostalgia of kids ages 6 and up today? Ooh, there's a bonus card. Oh, very cool. Well, let's take a look at that. If we are nostalgic for things of the past, like classic Digimon designs, then what exactly will the kids of today be nostalgic for? Let's take a look and see how curled this card is, because it appears, well, that looks pretty flat. I've certainly seen worse. I mean, television shows, movies, they're all based on properties from what is now, I guess, my generation's childhood, or at least things in the past. So what exactly is the nostalgia 20 years from now going to be for? I heard someone say that, oh wow, I love it. I heard someone say that the youth of today is, I heard someone say that the youth of today is kind of having to live off of or contend with the properties of yesterday, and I don't know that that's true. I actually find it, oh, we got double, nice. Look at that. I actually find it very reassuring that a game like Digimon, which is entering in this wild new phase, and if you haven't seen my Learn to Play video, you can check that out, but that they're willing to do something like the Classic Collection, where they're embracing old styles and designs, instead of saying, nope, we don't want Digimon to look old and out of date. Oh, wow. That was a favorite of mine. We don't want Digimon to look old and out of date. We want to make 3D rendered versions and redesigns and all of this that I see a lot of other properties do. Although, I will be honest, in Magic the Gathering, I've certainly had an affection for this drive into old borders, using old artists. How cool is that? Oh! Very nice. And maybe, even in the case of collectibles, there being a Charizard card that isn't going to necessarily be taking over the tournament scene, but it's nostalgia. It's something you want in your collection. There's the collectible part of trading card game that I think a lot of people don't think about or forget. After all, we don't want this to be a living card game, do we? For all of my talk of reprints for access, which, oh, Digimon. That one in particular is such a gorgeous foil there. For all of my talk of access and reprints, I wouldn't want any of these games, from Digimon to Magic the Gathering to Pokemon to any number of others that I enjoy, to be what's called a living card game. What is a living card game? A living card game would be one where when the new set... Sorry, I grew up on this. When the new set comes out, that you would just go down and buy a box that had one or perhaps even a playset of every card. There was an old game called Netrunner that was a living card game, and there's many others. And Netrunner was cool for what it was, but I don't think that works for a game like Digimon or Pokemon or Magic the Gathering. I don't think that the living card game model works for it because the collectible, gorgeous, the collectible aspect is an aspect. We hear about people who collect certain card types all the time. We hear about people who collect certain card artists, like they find out who their favorite artists of the cards are, and they will collect only art from that artist. And that's really neat. That's a kind of aspect of the culture of collectors that I think is healthy. There's definitely unhealthy parts, which we did see over the last few years, but I wouldn't want to go down and just get a living card game of the new set. There is a rush in what you get in a pack, in looking for cards of different rarities, and all of that is fine. When I talk about reprints, when I talk about prices, it has to do with access to gameplay. And remember that one thing I've said is that I'm all in favor of rare treatments, so long as basic game pieces are available and affordable. Meaning that when I show you art of a specific card, and that specific card might command a really high price on the secondary market. That's a $200 card. That's outrageous. As long as there's a 50-cent version, I am okay with that. And a lot of times I do show off some things on this channel that are expensive. And people get upset and say, well, I thought you were against this sort of thing. But as long as there is the ability to play the game on equal footing at an affordable, reasonable level. I think Richard Garfield was quoted as saying about 20 bucks for the more in-demand cards is about as high as it should go. And I'm going to agree with the legend himself on that. And anything beyond that, if it's that, oh, well, the foil one costs more, I have no objection to that, as long as the non-foil one is affordable. If the special art, and this is where some people get a little persnickety themselves. You talk about things like secret layers. Are they ever going to reprint that artwork in a secret layer again? Are they ever going to let people have access to that card? And maybe they won't. And maybe this is your one and only chance to get that artwork of your favorite card. Is that unacceptable? That if you want this character in an artwork, you're not going to be able to get it? And I actually am in favor of an artwork or treatment reserve list. I hope that the Kaladesh inventions are never reprinted, ever. That we do not ever see that soul ring, that beautiful Kaladesh soul ring reprinted. Ooh. Oh, very beautiful, very beautiful. Look at that. That we never see that there is an art reserve list, but that then all of the game pieces themselves on the reserve list can be reprinted with new art, and the prices on the secondary market can go tumbling down. And so that really is what it's about. And if that's done, well, then there's an excitement. Imagine if we said, hey, the art in this set is never going to be reused again, even if the cards will be reprinted heavily. Imagine if that was a corporate saying for any of these games. Oh, Digimon. Oh, look at that. So like this beautiful design here. What if Bandai said, and they haven't, by the way, this is just me speculating. What if they said, so look, we might reprint that card. in the future, but we will never use that classic collection artwork again. There is a reserve list for artwork or for treatments. This set is on the shelves, and once it is gone, it will never return with that artwork. But the game pieces we will ensure are plentiful and available. In that case, I'd have no objection. I know some people would have that kind of feelings of missing out, but for about artwork and treatments, and oh, but I really want that specific style or that specific artwork. Isn't that unfair to me that only the people with large amounts of cash flow or that were lucky to buy it at the time can get it? And it's like, well, maybe that is okay. Maybe it's okay if everyone can have a car, so to speak, but only some people manage to get the car in blue. But it's the same car, the same game piece. In my mind, I lean more towards that. And of course, it's a complicated issue. I never like that when we offer commentary, it's speaking in absolutes. Ooh, very pretty. Just love that hand-drawn style so much that it makes everything sound so there's no exceptions. There's always exceptions. There's always ways to go about it. Back in Magic the Gathering, one of the rules that they used to have was they didn't want cards to feature different artwork ever, because they wanted it so that no matter what language a card was printed in, you could tell just by the artwork what card it was. And that was very neat for a while. That's also how we got iconic artworks. You look at a Doomblade, and that is what a Doomblade looks like. Now, when we reprint it in every set, we want new artwork on it. And if you reprint it with the old artwork, that value plummets. I kind of like that plummeting value, while at the same time I like the special artwork. I don't know how I feel about that one. I would almost prefer that we stuck towards, but things have changed so much in terms of the world in which trading card games exist. So I don't know. Would you want it so that every card kept the same art except in very rare cases? Or new art in every set? I think that one of the problems with collectibles, oh boy, the memory's just flooding back here, that one of the problems with collectibles, whoo, look at that. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful treatment. Is that, sorry, I've got the cartoon show going through my head like a mile a minute right now. I will admit that. I will admit. Sorry, getting distracted. That one of the things is it's okay to change how things are done, and yet it's also okay to look back towards the past. And you know what? Nostalgia sells, because we're discovering that classic art, classic borders, classic artists. They even did something in Pokemon with the classic voice actors recently, which is really cool. You know, they had changed voice actors at one point, which it was very hard for me, because I associated, even though it was the English dub, as they say, I associated those voices with the characters. I liked them, and it just never sank. It's like recasting the actor, even though the art looked the same. I know in Japan, they consider that stuff way more important, to the point that voice actors are celebrities, are well known, as they should be, I think. I think we do a disservice here to disregard such an integral and important part of, you know, entertainment. And it never was the same for me. And it's interesting that we had no problem recasting, whereas we still have the same voice actors for the original Japanese anime of the show. And I do like listening to it with the originals with some subtitles for me. But it's really interesting that they have said, you know what, nostalgia is selling. We'll do power. Oh, look at that. Beautiful artwork there. The foil just catches that one so well. That we'll do things like, we'll have Power Rangers episodes where we'll bring back all the old actors. And no kid who's 6, 10 years old remembers Tommy. But I just said that, and for a lot of you listening, it just flooded your minds with your childhood. You probably tune in and watch that. And it's an interesting bridge to build between generations. The idea that these shows that go on for 20, 30 years, as shows like have done, that they actually have some weird kind of history. I don't like the idea that every 2 years we're just going to retell the same story. In some ways, some of these shows do, but they also keep an awareness of the past without resetting, and I think that's cool as well. Something in Magic that got me very upset with the story was they said recently, I think they've backtracked it, that they want the comic book approach of every different issue is a different world. I know that's an oversimplification, but you know, what happens in this story isn't canon. I'm going to be doing something on the Boom comics where, spoiler alert, Jace is killed and such. And they're excellent. Those Boom comics are absolutely excellent. And I think part of the reason that they're so strong is that by unleashing their restriction that nothing can change because it's the prime storyline, they're able to tell really interesting stories. But that all gets negated. I call it the Voyager Syndrome, where it just gets reset by saying, well, that's not real. Well, great, you just told this amazing story. Ha ha, yeah. You just told this amazing story, and then you said, well, that doesn't count. We call that the Voyager Syndrome. So Voyager was a contentious Star Trek show. I had my issues with it. It wasn't as bad as Enterprise, which got a lot better when Manny Koto took over as showrunner, but that's another story. And Voyager had this idea, which is really funny because they had a larger overall plot in terms of their being stranded in the Delta Quadrant, but they actually had the executive producers say, we want standalone episodes. And so everything kind of reverted to normal every week. And it stopped there from being really impactful stories when everything just goes back to the status quo. You compare that to Deep Space Nine and you get a very different thing. But then what they did every now and then on Voyager is they had an episode where really impactful things would happen, but by the end of it, it would all reset via time travel. There was one where it turns out the characters weren't really themselves, but rather replicants. Another one where it was a holographic recreation, all kinds of stuff like that. And people commented, you know, if it wasn't for that moment at the end when it turns out, oops, the time travel put everything back to normal, this was a really powerful, interesting episode that I wish could just continue and just build upon it. And so we call that in a lot of storytelling, we call that as though it's an official academic term, I call that the Voyager Reset Syndrome, that the best stories are the ones where they feel they can do whatever they want because it doesn't matter, because it's all gonna reset at the end. And with these Boom comics that I highly recommend you check out, that's part of why the story is so engaging and so interesting there, because they can go so far as to kill off a main character. Spoilers, sorry. It's old enough at this point. I'll do a video on it. Wow. That one's so beautiful. So beautiful. And I think that there's a medium. I think that the past should not be locked in ice. I think that the new Digimon artwork and the new cards coming out after Classic Collection are going to have to be free to explore new styles, to explore new mediums of representing this really awesome story, this really awesome game, these really memorable characters and such, but at the same time, completely severing your tie with the past doesn't need to happen either. It is okay to celebrate that which came before and not dismiss it as just empty nostalgia. So if you grew up on Digimon, if you are just returning to the game or checking it out for the first time, you might really enjoy this classic collection, I think, because it's got heavy nostalgia feels. And so even if these are just going in the binder to look at or to play, this might be something of interest to you. And I hope very much this discussion, oh, talk about old favorites. What a great one to end on. And I hope very much that this video and talk on nostalgia, and boy, look at that. That is really flat. How do they get it like that? That this talk on nostalgia and collectibles and our larger culture has been of some interest to you. Thanks again to Bandai for sponsoring this video and sending me this awesome box of Classic Collection, which is available in stores now. If you're interested in the Digimon trading card game, you can check out my video on how to play it here, where I go over all the rules and how to get up and running in about 10 minutes.
What is it you always told me, Professor? Buy singles?
It is not yet your time.
I can't remember you giving up, Professor. I really can't.
There is redemption for us all, Professor.
Professor, we English majors can survive anything.
Professor, you mustn't die. I had dibs.
It's over, Professor. It's finally over. You lose and I win.